Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second installment of the VPMP free webinar series, Digital Marketing in a Post-COVID Era. I am Kara Cray. I'm Program Manager for the Veterinary Practice Management Program here at Purdue, and I'm joined with Bill Schroeder, who will be our headliner today. Hi, Bill.
Headliner. That is,
headliner.
I like that. I like that. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Bill Schroeder is a founding member of InTouch Veterinary Practice Communications, and he has, for the past 26 years, helped over 7,500 veterinary practices educate their clients and share their messages. Bill is a professor here in our MBA programs and longtime friend of the Veterinary Practice Management Program. So we're very pleased to have you today. And without further ado, I'll let Bill continue here with the slides. We'll save questions for the end, if that's okay, at which point I will help Bill go through what you have. So do not hesitate. Feel free to write in the chat any questions you have as he goes along, and then he's more than happy to answer them at the end. And without further ado, take it away, Bill.
Hey, thank you, Kara. And first, let me say what a pleasure this is. I do have the honor, the pleasure to work with Purdue in programs like this. I went through VPMP when it was called VMI back in the day, fell in love with the program, and I'm so grateful that I was asked to be part of the program for so very long. And I'm very honored that my phone keeps ringing and you keep asking me back. So thank you so very much. Now, everyone else that's out there, if I haven't met you in person, it's nice to meet you. For those that I have met in the past, it's nice to see you again. Thank you very much for coming and for learning how I can help you grow your practice and understand what I think is the greatest opportunity out there today, and that's digital marketing. And here's a slide, and I didn't put it up there so that I could say that, here's another picture of me and you get like two Bill Schroeders at once, which can be a little bit much, I guess. But the real reason I put this up is because this circle that is here, that's indicating and reminding me to let you know that all this content that I'm going to share with you is based upon real world applications, real world useful techniques and processes that have been created to grow practices just like yours. When we start looking at things like this, or we start developing information for talks like this, I gather my managers around. And I'm very fortunate to work with some of the brightest minds in marketing and advertising as a whole, not even counting veterinary medicine. I'm talking countrywide. I have folks that work for very, very major brands, and now they're working on veterinary practices just like yours. So I circled the wagons and I said, okay, what is working right now? What do I need to talk about? And basically they gave me this information to share with you. Now I'm going to add some dad jokes along the way, and maybe we'll have some laughs. But the reality is that this is the stuff that's moving the needle. So let's dive into it. And before we start, in exchange for your attention, you're going to learn some things today that you can apply immediately. If you're like me, when I come back from continuing education or I take part in a webinar, I've got all these great ideas, right? I come back to my team and I almost vomit all over them with ideas, right? I'm just like, all this stuff. And they want to back out of the room and say, let's just do a few things, okay? Let's just take and pause, take a look at some things that are working and what's not, and then pick a couple of things out of my presentation that might work well to align with your practice. If you'd like my slide deck to go through, or the recordings aren't enough, I'm happy to share this with you so that you can use this as a reference point or share with your teams. To do so, you can reach me quite easily at Bill, that's B-I-L-L, at intouchvet.com, INTOUCHVET. So you've got this information you can share. So let's get into it. We're going to go through some key points here. And these key points will all revolve around you controlling the information and realizing, like we did at the beginning of all this COVID craziness, that there isn't a shortage. And what I mean, like just like we learned there wasn't a shortage for toilet paper out there in the world, there is no shortage of information. And when you consider that, and you consider what all of the information that's being preached and expressed to our pet owners, our prospective clients, you can feel like this poor gentleman on the screen, that your head is spinning around and round, and you could be causing, or they could be confused. I look at that as an opportunity, a chance for you and your practice to control the conversation. Let's speak specifically about COVID, right? And let's think back about all of the information that we needed to transfer from the practice to a pet owner. First, phones were ringing off the hook with people concerned whether or not their pets could get or transmit COVID, right? Remember those? And remember the days where people were saying, we think pets can, certain pets can't. I believe there was a big cat in the zoo in New York where they claimed he could, then it was ferrets. All this information was crazy. If you have an effective way to transfer your information, control the conversation, and further support the fact that you are an expert within your market for pet-related topics, you're doing a good job. But if you haven't already created that funnel, that megaphone, if you will, you might have been challenged by this. And you might have had an abundance of information that you either need to correct or get out there very, very quickly. And this is what I'm talking about. That's the root of everything that we are talking about and doing today. But before we get into the topics, there's a bit of advice I'd like to provide you. I've done this forever, like 27 years, right? And I've had the honor of working with thousands of practices. One of the things that I believe is a little bit unfortunate is that people aren't taking the time to learn, or practices, sometimes, most of the time, are not taking the time to learn who they really are. And they're failing to realize the fact that people don't understand the difference between good and bad veterinary medicine, but they really understand the feeling that they have when they, when they come into your practice and they communicate with you. So my very first bit of advice is to be authentic. Be the person that the market needs you to be. Be the person, the practice, the veterinarian, the practice manager, the technician, that you can be for a sustained period of time. By doing so, your message can be consistent, and you will continue to attract the people that are making your practice grow, right? Practices make the mistake of finding a really nice brand. Maybe it's across the country, maybe it's across town, and they believe that the brand is being successful, and they try to emulate what that brand is doing. Sometimes that might work for a short period of time, but chances are it's not sustainable. So be who you are. And this is tongue in cheek here, right? Can you find some less authentic veterinary professionals with a less than authentic, I don't know what happened to this stretched out dog? That's my hope. Okay, so first, let's talk about that content. Let's talk about why content is important. You've heard about this, and I'm just going to ask you kind of, I don't know, without even, it's kind of another tongue-in-cheek thing, who doesn't use Google? The answer is probably every one of you uses Google. And it's important that you realize what Google is and why it has such the market share. I believe that I read a statistic not too long ago. It's about a year ago, but it can only go up. So about a year ago, I read a statistic that over 87% of business to consumer information the searches that are done via Google. That's amazing, right? Can you think of another company that's got such market share? Google is the king of the hill. Why have they earned that? They've earned that because they relate really, really good information in a speedy manner, in a manner that is accessible and easy to use by their consumer base. And if any of those things fall, meaning, and most particularly the accuracy of the information, if they fall from grace, or if Google starts to deliver less than valuable information, well then I have to say that Google would have a huge problem monetizing and selling ads, right? So Google has to deliver really good information. Furthermore, I want you to look at Google in a different light. I want you to realize what Google is trying to do. Google is trying to marry up people that have a need with brands, or in this case, it's pet owners with veterinarians like you that can solve their problems. Google uses experience in ranking practices like yours and combines that with the experience that the people they are sending over to your practice have when they visit there. And we'll get into that in a minute, okay? And I guess I just mentioned that, but the real reason that you're here is because that you want to gain the attention of pet owners in your market, right? That's the like the top of the hill. That's the whole game. And if we're going to do so, we need to apply two things: strategy and purpose. Meaning you need to think about the why behind your creating content and what you expect that content to do. Everything within your digital marketing must have a purpose, and your website needs to be the center of that. Why is that? Because your website is the only true real estate on the internet that you own. All those other social channels like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you are just borrowing space on their platform, and you're only semi in control of what information goes out there. And you certainly have the risk of all of your information going away should the resource be shut down, sanctioned by the government, or do something that causes you not to participate. So put all of your attention, no, don't do that. Put most of your attention on your website and utilize all the other social channels to drive traffic back to your website. And when you're doing so, I want you to realize that your marketing, your website, your other social channels, well, they're like a grocery store. All those channels, all the information. In fact, let's speak specifically about your website. It should be done correctly, designed with a strategic and purposeful mindset, just like a grocery store. Can you imagine how frustrating it would be if you showed up at a grocery store, right? And the stock boys just stocked things wherever the heck they found space? Meaning a pallet full of corn comes in, and the kid walks the corn down and puts it right next to the milk. And then Oreos come in and they put them right next to the turnips. You would be so frustrated as a consumer there that you'd actually leave the store because you couldn't find what you need. Furthermore, have you ever walked through a store and purchased things that you didn't really think you'd purchase? I wonder if that's an accident, or I wonder if the grocery stores have identified the things that are a point of sale, or they are very attractive for a consumer like me, and have positioned them like, there's Oreos in the middle of the aisle stacked up. I have to walk by them. Bill likes Oreos. Bill puts them in the cart and then gets yelled at by Katie when he comes home with Oreos in the cart because that was not on the list. It's because Google, or the grocery stores and Google, both understand the mindset of the consumer and will position information or products, i.e. my grocery store example, in a manner that causes the consumer, the shopper, to do things that that maybe they didn't realize they needed to do. It's a path, it's a journey. And if you think of positioning content in a manner where you're saying, okay, I know that if I have a prospective pet owner that is exposed to this testimonial from a client, this video about this particular service, this information about my practice history or about this specialist that works in my practice, and I can walk them on that journey, I have an increased likelihood that that person is going to do the things that I need them to do, like call the practice, book an appointment, request more information, download a white paper. That's what I'm talking about. That's strategic thinking, okay? And I guess it all culminates by you realizing, like I said earlier, that all of your content needs to have a purpose. So here's a little exercise that I like to teach practices like yours. I like to say, let's pause and print off every single page of your website. Take that content, staple it together, and hand it to somebody that is not in the practice. Ask that person to read the content, and at the bottom of every page, write what they think you want them to do after reading or digesting the content. Then you should read their responses and determine whether or not their responses match your intent. If they do, well, then your content is rocking. It's probably working already, and you're seeing the results of really good effort. If it doesn't, your content might be broken. If you are at this point in the talk today or in your marketing life, and you are thinking, holy cow, I feel bad because I've never considered that, that's okay. It's okay because chances are the practice down the street is not either. And this is a really great opportunity for you to put your content, your practice, head and shoulders above the competition. That's why you're here today, because you care. Whether you're watching this while you're eating your lunch or you're watching this later as a recorded version, you've cared enough to dedicate yourself to being better and creating great content. And participating, if you choose to participate in the VPMP program, is part of that. So I don't want any of this nonsense of you saying, I can't do it, I'm not going to get better. You can, and you are. And I want to be part of that journey for you. So let's move forward, okay? We talked about this. If people don't know what to do, the content might be broken. But the realization here is the fact that this is Google's client. And you need to satisfy Google by realizing that she is asking Google for advice. Google needs to satisfy her and provide her with a really good user experience. They do this by applying an algorithm and ranking practices like yours in order for how well they, Google, feel that your practice can satisfy their needs. There's a direct relationship there. And if you come and join us at VPMP, we're going to get into two concepts really deep. These two concepts are EAT, and you can write this down. You can Google this or Google it. You can research it on your own. EAT is Google's concept of expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Every bit of your content needs to check one of those boxes: expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Because Google wants to marry up people that can solve their problems. And then the next thing is YMYL, your money, your life. Google loves content that clearly shows that the content creator is going to help support health, happiness, financial stability, all of those things that are interesting for the user. So you can research those concepts on your own, or we can dive into that VPMP. So let's take a look at messaging. Overall, when you're creating content and you're looking at either eat, your money, your life, or generally solving the questions or answering the questions that happen in your practice, I like to start here. I like to have people ask themselves, is your content fact-based? Does it have a positive theme? Does it support your brand and image? Does it make things easy to understand? And do the pet owners need the information? Does it add value? If you can check all of those boxes, wow, you're on your way. Okay. But the most important thing is to, again, realize that the information needs to directly answer the client's needs. And a little side tip would be to develop a content creation list that is based upon those questions that you and your team are like so tired of answering. It's like if I'm asked this question one more time, I'm going to go out of my mind. Those questions become the real starting point for what content should be created. Like, for example, let's talk about curbside for just a second. I had a friend I had a friend contact me about her practice. And she was saying, hey, I am so tired of people not following my directions for curbside. I mean, it's really driving me nuts. And I said, okay, well, let's take a look at it. What are you doing to tell them about curbside? And she goes, well, there's a clear sign on the front door of the practice. So hold on a second. So people, pet owners, are actually at their house. They put their car in their dog in the car. They drive to the practice. They pick up the dog. They put the dog on the leash. They walk them to the front door, and they're met with a sign that says, get back in your car and call the practice to find further instructions. She said, yes. And I said, is that how you would want to be treated? Who's going to be satisfied by that? Like, who's actually going to say that was a really good experience? No one. But what if you used that as an example and you said, let's give them so much information that they stop asking questions? That's what developing really good content looks like. And then when you consider pairing that with how we consumers, pet owners, obviously use Google, you've got things like, how often does this? Where is that? Why does my dog? Who is this? How do I? These are examples of content creation hubs. And this is flexing a little bit. This is some content that my team created for a client of ours, Blum Animal Hospital in Chicago, just right down the street from Wrigley Field. And we earned what's called the answer box, so that we were able to look at a need that the practice had. Basically, the practice wanted to meet new residents in the area. How did we do that? We looked at what a new resident needed. And the new resident needed to register their dog. So we started creating content around how to register your dog in Chicago. We created a blog, a podcast. We actually wrote content on a web page, and Google rewarded us by answering this and positioning the content number one. So it's basically a direct response to what the market needs. You can do that if you really dig deep, okay? And ask yourself, does it add value? So we'll talk about this in just a moment. And we talked about curbside. So let's say you're having problems with curbside. You might want to look at asking, have you clearly communicated the changes with your clients? Have you leveraged your website and app to assist in your operation? Are you tracking form fills, downloads, and appointments scheduled? And are you using the data that you get from this to improve? If you're not, you might want to take these suggestions, but that is what content is about. You know, I threw this slide in here because I really recently dealt with some practices that are still exhausted and are becoming more and more exhausted, actually, by COVID, by all the craziness that is existing right now. And, you know, I felt that it was appropriate to speak at this point because a lot of the frustration is based upon poor communication and poor content relation from a practice to a pet owner. I'm going to say that your pet owners, your staff. They're both exhausted. And as a result, we're getting short-tempered clients, and our staff is burnt out. And I'm going to suggest that if you realize that everyone is tired and scared, that you should probably focus on how you can make that better by easing the load and improving communications. As soon as we realize that we're in this together, and that, you know, conveying this message to your clients and staff is extremely important, it can have extremely powerful impact. And for me, that's setting really good expectations for what the pet owner can expect to experience when they come into the practice. So that's content. And I could go on and on and on about content. In fact, if there's nothing, if there's one thing you take away from this, is that you need to create as much content as you can, as frequently as you can, sustain such a program. So, and when I say content, I'm not only speaking of written word. I like podcasts. I love video because of this, because of the mobile device. I love it. But if we're talking about a technique, I need you to pay attention to something known as paid search or pay-per-click. I was actually, I'm on the road for the first time in about 15 months or 13 months. Welcome to the Courtyard by Marriott in Lakeland, Florida. By the way, hello, I'm broadcasting from my beautiful room here. And it's my very first time on the road since the beginning of COVID. And I was here on the day that things started to shut down. It's called Social Media Marketing World 2020. And if you'd like to get better at social media or digital marketing as a whole, there's a group of veterinary professionals that wind up here. It's a conference that's put on by this group, Social Media Examiner, and this really, really smart guy named Michael Stelzner. I like totally fanboy this guy, right? So if you're looking to learn this specifically, meet me there, and you'll find me in all the chat boards and everything speaking about veterinary things. We usually have a dinner, so check that out. But I was at this conference when COVID broke out. And Michael Stelzner drops this bomb where he's turning around and saying, hey, if you are relying upon organic, meaning non-paid digital marketing to further your brand, you better find another way to do it, or find something else to do with your time or your resources, because it's just about dead. And right after that conference, that keynote he put together, that's me with another person I fanboy. Her name is Mari Smith. She's an absolute genius. That's M-A-R-I Smith, okay? And she's just super duper smart. And she puts up this slide, okay? And this slide, I'm sitting, keep in mind, I'm in the front row here. So this is how much of a geek I get about this stuff. I'm sitting in the front row for Mari's presentation, right? And she puts up this slide and it says, hey, organic reach on Facebook. It lived from 2004 to 2012. And she's about to talk to me because I raise my hand and I go, hey, Mari, I thought she meant 2021. And she goes, no, Bill, it's been dead. It's been dead long ago. It died in 2012. Welcome to the party. Okay. And the reason is that Facebook, Google, Instagram, they've all limited how much information can go out from a business like ours to their consumers, for free at least. And if you want that reach, you're going to need to pay for it. Now, Mari knows Zuckerberg calls Mari, like for real. Zuckerberg calls Mari to get advice on how to position brands and content. How does this relate to you? This relates to you through this slide. I got this slide by searching for the #1 searched term in veterinary medicine, which is vet near me. This is important because of this device, this mobile device. Google knows where this device is at, and Google realizes that you probably need a veterinarian if you're searching for something like that. And Well, let's solve an emergency first and then move on to other things. And we'll get into that in a second here. But when you look at this screen, you can see at the top of the screen, paid ads make up the top 3 positions. Then we get into the maps, which, by the way, I know 7 out of 10 organic clicks come from the maps when specifically talking about veterinary practices. So getting in the maps is important. I'll talk about in a minute. And then the traditional organic starts all the way down here. Wait, that means that number 1 can actually be number 8. That means that your clients have actually gone through an obstacle course, a journey, they've gone through all of these other practices before they made it to the very first organic bit of content. That's a lot, isn't it? That's too much. When I say it's too much of a risk. So if you want to be positioned up here, you're going to have to pay. Now, I love paid, but this is not something I would suggest you do on your own. In fact, I'm almost going to insist that you not do this on your own, just because it can be a huge money pit. There are plenty of people in the veterinary space out there that are certified by Google, that are trusted partners of Google, that can help you with something like this. My experience is definitely you can waste more money on bad campaigns than the cost of a professional, well-performing campaign. How would I use this? Let's say curbside, right? How would I use it? Well, I'd use it, I develop a campaign around great social and Google campaign copy, right? Okay. Then I would push the traffic that comes from an ad, okay, to a dedicated landing page on my website. I would place a call to action, which is book a curbside appointment now at the forefront of the landing page. And I would track how many people are actually clicking on that page and make adjustments from there. Moving forward, let's talk about your reputation. I put on like a 3-day workshop on reputation. You've all heard this stuff, right? And you've all heard that it's really important to make sure you've got a good reputation. You're probably sick and tired of hearing it. I'm going to take it to the next level here, okay? And I'm going to have you realize that although most of the conversations out there about reputation surround the negative, and they speak to your efforts absorbing the impact of the negative review, I don't disagree with that. In fact, that's something you need to do. But if you're not realizing that Google knows what the public thinks about you and is actually utilizing that information to evaluate whether or not they are going to rank you, then you're missing the whole point. Because Google values the public sentiment. Let's go back to the beginning of this talk. And let's realize that if Google is truly the referral service they are, and I promise you they are, they're matching people and brands up together because the brand can solve the need that the pet owner has, then you need to realize that Google is going to rank those that have a better reputation. Furthermore, I did a study using all of our clients, thousands of practices, okay? And we were able to see that practices that had a higher online Google review score were more likely to rank for keywords of, we call them trophy keywords, like best, greatest, most advanced, because Google is going to see that, hey, you've got a 2.7 Google ranking and you're claiming you're the best veterinarian, when there's a practice that is equidistant from the searcher's location, who's also claiming that they're the best, but public sentiment says that they've got that they are because they've got a 4.8 rating. Google looks at that. In fact, there's a very sharp drop off at 4.2. 4.2 on the Google rating, there it dives. Okay, so and I'll show you this in a second. So see this star? This star is where I was at when I searched for vet near me. It served me up 3 things. These 3 practices. okay? Okay, and the first one is right down the road from my agency, and they've got a 2.9 Google star rating, right? Okay, so 2.9. And then if you look here, the second practice, well, they served up this practice because physical location, right? Then they served up number 2, which happens to be the furthest practice in this example. Why did they do that? They did that because if you're going to drive past number 1, right? You're driving past them because, well, it's not, the dog's not in, it's not a dire emergency, right? So they're saying that if the consumer is willing to drive past number 1, well, then they're probably likely to be able to drive past number 3 for a better experience. So they listed number 2 as a higher recommendation because they've got more Google reviews and a higher Google score. So if I were talking to practice number 3 or practice number 1, I would say work on your Google reviews, quantity and quality. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not something you can avoid anymore. This is not something that you can say, oh, it doesn't matter to me. It absolutely does. You have to have an active reputation management program within your practice if you're going to succeed. Okay. About now, there's 2 conversations that people want to have. They want to say, okay, how do I respond to negative reviews? I'm not going to get into that. It's not fair, because in order to walk you down that path, you not only need to have a tremendous amount of conversation about it, but there are details that would actually, how do I say this, cause one situation. Well, let me just say, every situation is unique and you need to handle it as such, okay? Then the other conversation that people want to have is that, how do I get more reviews? Okay, and I'll hit that right now. I think I have a slide for it. But first, 90% of consumers read reviews before their first visit, and each Yelp star increase means a 5 to 9% revenue increase. Okay, now that's a really good study to look up, and I would pay really, really close attention to this Yelp study. And if you're trying to convince somebody that they need to work on their review, a business owner like me or maybe you, bottom line really resonates well. And there's a study out there, it was done by the Harvard Business Review, that actually looked at restaurants. I know it's not a veterinary practice, but there's not enough data, and we can't get into the financials to really take a look at this and perform this study. But this guy from the HBR did this study on restaurants, and he showed for every increase, there was a bottom line increase in revenue to 5 to 9%. I think that's huge. And if I were to guess why, it's because people are hyper-focused on customer service and all the things that people pay attention to during reviews. And when they're doing that and they're satisfying that, checking those boxes, they're actually being a better business owner. And I welcome you to do that. But this is where I was going a second ago when I was talking about how to get more reviews. You need to realize that 80% of reviews come after a request. And after a transaction, if you were to utilize an automated system, there's many of them out there that can actually send a request for a review, you're going to have a higher incidence of actual reviews, okay? And if you think about it, if you're practicing great medicine, offering great customer service, the reviews will naturally be more positive. So more positivity, more reviews equal higher rankings. A little bit of homework for you here. I highly suggest that while you were in your practice, you open up a browser on your mobile device and you Google vet near me, and maybe some of the other popular search terms, veterinarian near me, things like that, and look who comes up in search. If you're in your practice, you should be number 1, right? Okay. If you're not, a lot of work needs to be done and you need to start right away. But the other thing I want you to pay attention to is the others that show up in search there. because that is who Google considers to be your real competition. Forget about, this beef that you've got with the veterinarian across town and how he or she practices really bad medicine. Forget about that. Just concentrate for this purpose. Concentrate on who Google is ranking as your competition. But bottom line, to get more reviews, you got to ask. Here's some tips, okay, on how to get some more. Build a page on your website that makes it easy for people to leave reviews. Include a link in your email signature. Get a Yelp kit, but please, I haven't found a way to make Yelp work well for a veterinary practice from a paid standpoint. I like you contacting Yelp and asking them for a kit that puts stickers on the doors and things like that. And you need to promote people to leave reviews on Yelp, but I don't like paying for Yelp advertising. It just has, I'd like to make it work, but I've never found a way to do that. Okay. Put messaging on the bottom of all your receipts. Ask for reviews in that by saying, hey, reviews are really important to us. Click here, and it takes them to a page on their website, on your website, that highlights maybe Google, Yelp, and Facebook. I like lobby signage where you can focus on a client, include their review, and thank people so that the people there understand that reviews are important to your practice. I like you asking for reviews on service pages, meaning if you really want to excite people about dentistry, you should probably have the information, the typical stuff that you'd have out there, like top 5 reasons that you need, that your pet may need a dental, things like that. And then testimonial type messaging that comes from reviews that is specific for a dental procedure. I like that practices that respond to reviews and let people know that they appreciate them. And one little tip that I do when I'm consulting with a practice is I have them put a television in their lobby that cycles through a PowerPoint presentation or something that features clients, identifies how important they are to the practice, maybe puts their review out there. People like to see that. People like to have the experience leveraged or supported by that information. Okay, we're in the home stretch, okay? This is the last topic I'm going to expand upon. We're going to spend about 5 minutes here, but I ask you that you continue to put some questions in chat. I'm here to help you. So there's no question off limits, even if I didn't cover it here. If it deals with veterinary marketing, I'm here for you and I'll do my best to answer it. If I can't answer it, I'm going to try my best to find you a solution after the webinar. So the last thing is to leverage email and text opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, this is still a massive, massive opportunity, okay? And you've heard probably me say how important email is. I dig it. I think I always say that email is the king, but I am officially crowning text messaging as the up and coming king. Text messaging is the prince right now. And the reason behind that is if Kara and I were going to dinner after this, like, can you actually imagine like in person, it's been so long since we've been in person together is what I'm trying to say. And let's say we actually were going to go for dinner. I wouldn't send Kara an email from the classroom to her office. I would text her and I'd say, hey, what time do you want to meet for dinner? That's because it is the connection. It's a personal connection. And that 90% of text messages are read within 3 minutes of their delivery. Think about that. Think about how much that differs from an email message that can get lost. So if you've earned the trust of your client base to actually have their text number, wow, you're on your way. And it will be, by and large, the most efficient way to communicate with people. It already is, but the acceptance is growing more and more. In fact, about 2 years ago, I had a friend that, arguably this is San Francisco, so don't roll your eyes about this. And I admit that that they are a much more tech savvy or tech based community than maybe some of the rural areas around the country. But this gentleman was opening a practice in San Francisco. We were out to dinner one night, and he said, "What do you think about me not taking a client unless they give me their text number?" I said, "People are going to freak out. People are going to freak." And I said, they're not going to like it. And I saw him about 6 months later, and he claimed that he didn't have a single person push back. And he taught me. He's like, "Bill, it's all about positioning. It's about explaining to them that you are their dog's doctor, and that when he has information to share, he needs to get it to you right away. If you want it to be delivered slowly, well, he can drop it in the mail, but who would want to get that?" And as soon as that realization is there, he said a light bulb goes off. And then when you think about that concept that he taught me, the realization that he gave me, and then you pair it with a reason for creating content to the point that you're creating such great content that people actually want to forward your content via email, or that you're creating special content down to the point that you're giving them special. I made that big intentionally there, right? It's special offers, special timely information, special useful content. You may earn the right to be exposed to their friends, their audience. Okay? I'm going back to my dinner with Paul, and I asked him, and I'll just divert for just a second here. I asked him about the delivery of the message, asking for the text message and the email message. And remember, I said it's how you deliver it. A lot of it has to do with your team and how your team is actually positioning the message. We've all seen it, right? You've seen someone at reception that is hesitant to push an invoice across the table instead of presenting it because they believe in the value and what was transmitted, the care that was given. Think how different that is. Somebody that's like, "Ugh, sorry, it's $1,500. That person at the other end of the message immediately feels that it's too expensive. But instead, if it's positioned like I explained, and Paul explained to me, people don't doubt it. So I suggest you build systems within your practice and reward your team members that gather and ultimately confirm their content so that you've got clean email and clean text information. Okay? Creating a culture that realizes that if you've got a really efficient communication stream going between you and pet owners, create that culture that supports that, you're going to be in good shape. Last bit of information, okay, is balance. You can't have that culture. You can't have that respect from the pet owner if you're going to violate the agreement that you have and just flood them with marketing information. So I like creating an atmosphere where the greatest majority of the information is educational and helps them solve the main issue, which is, how do I have my pet live a longer, happier life? Isn't that everything? Like, let's go back to dentals. If you created an advertisement or a text message that said, I mean, which one is more attractive? 20% off a dental procedure, or click here to learn more about how we can help your pet live a longer, healthier life. Well, the latter, obviously, right? Because that's what people really want. The 20%, you're just going to send $150 out the door. Okay. So balance is really important. I like the number 30%. That's kind of the high watermark, though, right? I don't want more than 30% of your content to be sales. In fact, if you can get it closer to 10 or 15%, that's where the sweet spot really is. And it, like, circling back, like, that's how you have that trusted platform. I started this presentation by talking about, what if you had a platform that was so efficient that you calmed all of the questions, or you provided the information that your market really needs from the position of a veterinarian or a pet care expert. If you've earned that trust by communicating with them efficiently, when the next big thing happens, the next, God forbid, another pandemic comes about, you've already earned the respect of your market. You don't have to fight to get it in the midst of all that confusion that's happening. So with that said, that's where I think you should be paying attention. To summarize, I would create really good content. I'd pay attention to your social channels like Facebook, YouTube. I'd look at my reputation and make certain I'm working with my entire team to further the reputation and the communication structure between our clients. I would research paid advertising, and I would track the impact of paid to make certain that when you're making that investment within paid Google search, paid social search, that you're realizing what it really is bringing into the practice. And lastly, above everything, be authentic in what you do. So with that said, I don't want to take up any more time. We've got a couple minutes. We've got probably 10 minutes left for questions. Kara, what you got?
I don't have any in the chat yet, so feel free to write in, but I was sort of thinking a couple of questions myself, actually. Let's say a practice is excited about the idea of maybe doing a video as a way of creating content. And you had held up your phone earlier in the webinar here that says you can create a video with your phone. I mean, do you think that there's other equipment that a clinic can look into buying apart from an iPhone that they might be interested in?
You certainly can. And, we have a video department. And, the really kind of funny thing is that the iPhone will perform almost as well as the professional devices. Now, so a really quick answer to your question is I would start with a really good mobile device, whether it be an Android or an iPhone. I'm an iPhone guy. Mm-hmm. Get the latest version, and I would focus on that and maybe some lighting. Play with some lighting. Look at the impact of lighting when you move lights around. I think that you can do really, really well using that.
Cool. And Mike, looks like we got a little question here. In regards to people who are pushing back about curbside with other professional services opening up, should these conversations be taken offline, or should a clinic respond in public? And what messaging should they use?
Yeah, so when you start talking about actually communicating and responding to a review, I like to respond to all reasonable reviews in a public manner, and then suggest that a conversation happens offline. If there are questions that deal with procedures, like let's say curbside, I would absolutely say that should happen in a public forum. One little bit of advice is that when you're responding to a review, you should realize that your audience is far greater than the person that you're responding to. In fact, I would almost argue that that person is much less significant than the thousands of other people that are realizing or reading your response. And they're looking at you. You know, I always joke with my teams and I say, it's easy to be great when it's 85 degrees on a beach with a drink in your hand, right? It's really easy to be great and happy and wonderful. But I want to be evaluated when it is 40 below zero and I've forgotten my gloves. So that's where the real stuff comes out, and how you behave in the public eye at that time has deep value.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. Any other questions? Oh, we got another one here. We are taught to increase our Facebook following by creating posts that will engage clients in a relationship as if you were a professional friend, using posts about staff, etc., humor, and personal stories about other clients. This doesn't fit with delivering only content that answers questions and gives information. Is this strategy dead as well?
No, it's very good question. Thank you for asking such a detailed question. So first off, it's important to realize that without paid, your organic Facebook or social reach, let's speak specifically about Facebook, since that was the platform you mentioned, only about 5% of your organic messages make it through the funnel, basically to the consumer without paid. So that's important. And when you think about the spirit of information that I spoke of earlier, directly answering questions, and the balance behind having most of your marketing be information, and then the smallest component, I said 10 to 15% is the target zone, be sales. You need to realize that you need more information, and more information about what it's like at the practice. For instance, so you go out there and you throw some bait out there that speaks to creating a longer, healthier life for a pet. When people land on your social, they need to feel what it's like to be in your practice, the culture, the reason that they want to come there. Because if you remember, and if anyone has seen me speak before, and I see some friends in the audience that probably could mouth these words with me. People do not understand the difference between good and bad veterinary medicine, but they absolutely understand the atmosphere that you've created. That atmosphere should be created by highlighting your staff, demonstrating what it's like to have an experience within the practice, and all those things that you mentioned. So it's a balance.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's perfect. Anybody else have a question? Trust me, he loves questions.
I do.
All right, with that, I'm going to continue on a little bit here, but again, feel free to type a question in the chat, or as Bill mentioned, you can always email him at bill@intouchvet.com. He's happy to hear from you as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the organization that brought you this free webinar today. It is the Veterinary Practice Management Program here at Purdue University. You can check out our website at vet.purdue.edu/VPMP. It's comprised of 4 modules: developing, leading your veterinary team, veterinary practice financials, learning where to start, social marketing and social media for your veterinary clinic, taught by our one, Bill Schroeder. There he is. And strategic thinking, creating a plan for loyalty and growth. Please feel free to check out our website for the dates for these modules, as well as pricing and more information. It does fulfill all the continuing education credits required for the Cvpm certification. So that's a big question that we're asked. If you could advance one more slide, Bill.
Sorry.
That's fine. Oh, there's my face. Yep, there I am without bangs. Simply, if you'd like to get your 1-hour CEU credit for attending this webinar, please do not hesitate to email myself at ceasterb@purdue.edu. I will be happy to send that certification in the order of which they're received. And my goal is to get them done by today, which I'm pretty good at. So go ahead and email me. I will happily send that to you. You can see my contact information there. And if you'd like to hear more about the veterinary practice management program, I am lucky enough to be helped by my coworker, Brian Grimes. He is the Associate Director of Recruiting here at Cranert Executive Education. You can see his smiling face and his contact information there as well. You can simply email vpmp@purdue.edu and he will happily respond to you. Or call him, he'll chat. Oh, what's up, Bill?
I gotta say something, because I've done this for a long time, and I'm, going to say something nice about VPMP, and I don't have to say this at this point, but it's really important that if you're looking for an experience that is different from a typical, I don't know, a CE session or a workshop or something like that, I need you to check this out and realize that the bond that is created by the people that go through this program is so special that I really believe in it. I have the privilege of having met people along the way and watched relationships develop within the program to the point where people are vacationing together, they're gathering at conferences and sharing information, and just sitting even at lunch or at dinner or maybe having a cocktail in the evening, you can hear people sharing information that goes far beyond the wonderful things that happen in the classroom. So I believe in this program. If you'd like to learn more about it, please take Kara's advice and come and see us there. So thanks for this. Thanks for allowing me to get that out.
Thank you, Bill. Absolutely. That was great. I really appreciate that. We love you back.
Yeah, right on.
Could you hit one more slide forward?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and in case you're interested in our next installment of the VPMP free webinar series, it has a very long title. It's 4 elements every crucial conversation should have. Practical tools for knowing what to say and how to say it. I am so excited for this webinar. It's taught by Professor Ben Dunford. Think about a very crucial conversation you have with your staff and how awkward it can be, or how potentially confrontational, how long you might delay a really crucial conversation just based, you're afraid of it backfiring or blowing up or something like that. So I am thrilled to have this content. I can't wait to partake in it and learn from it. So mark your calendar for 12 noon Eastern time for Tuesday. It's our first Tuesday webinar. Normally they've been Thursdays. Tuesday, June 29th at noon. So with that, we'll sign off here. Thank you again, Bill, for joining. You're the best. And thank you everyone for participating and for your wonderful questions. And don't forget to email me for your 1-hour CEU as well. All right, thanks.